In Ekiti State, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the governorship elections, Professor Kolapo Olushola, has filed a petition at the Election Tribunal to challenge the result of the poll. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, had declared the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, as the winner of the governorship polls. But the PDP candidate alleges that the election was marred by intimidation, use of force, and discrepancies in the results released by INEC.
The July 14, 2018 election has come and gone. But unfortunately, again, it is not yet gone totally. Why? Because it was characterized by malpractices like ballot stuffing, like ballot box snatching, falsification of result. That means that whoever has been announced as the winner definitely cannot be the winner. In the face of these malpractices, definitely I have been robbed. And that is why I am here to challenge this. I want to assure you what I'm asking for is that I be declared as the winner of that election.
To other matters now, the federal government has approved the Transmission Company of Nigeria to be the anchorman for a N72 Bn investment. It plans to sink into 11 electricity distribution companies to upgrade their distribution infrastructure and networks. The managing director of the TCN, Mr. Usman Mohammed, told journalists in Abuja that the TCN got the nod because it already had a comprehensive system study and a plan on Nigeria's electricity network. The TCN also mentioned that it has recovered more than 693 out of 800 containers of power equipment abandoned at various ports in the country.
We have been able to complete the evaluation of Abuja transmission project, and for the first time in the history of the sector, out of the six lots, all the lowest price won. Now, out of the transmission rehabilitation and expansion program, we have also the Lagos Ogun transmission project, where we are putting 6 substations between Lagos and Ogun. You know, these substations between Lagos and Ogun are the substations that we are doing to target the most industrialized part of Nigeria. At the last simulation that was done in December was 7,124. We have commissioned so many substations and lines after that simulation. We deliberately decided not to do another simulation because we want to do a simulation that will come up with a number that's very big. Because you know that it was after that substation that we commissioned Odoguyo, we commissioned 2x60 in Kaduna, we commissioned in Zaria, we commissioned in Gombe, we commissioned in Bauchi, we commissioned in several other places. But as at December, the wheeling capacity was 7,124.
Years after the privatization exercise, the country remains in dire need for adequate electricity to power homes and industries. In this next report, we take a look at this challenge that the nation faces in meeting the power needs of the people.
Reports say Nigeria, with a population of over 180 million people, has one of the lowest rates of net electricity generation per capita in the world. Estimated at 45%, leaving approximately 93 million people in the country without access to electricity. Power generation falls short of demand, resulting in blackouts, load shedding, and a reliance on private generators for power supply. For this reason, the federal government on November 1st, 2013, sold its electricity generation companies, GENCOs, and distribution companies, DISCOs, to private owners under the 2005 Electric Power Sector Reform Act. The documents required the unbundling of the state-owned Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, which oversaw the GENCOs and DISCOs leading up to their full privatization, with the federal government retaining control over the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN.
All material placed on your head will be made lighter.
5 years down the line, the challenge of inadequate electricity supply remains, with the power distribution companies threatening to quit and expressing willingness to sell the power assets at discounted rates. This may have prompted the federal government to intervene, the latest being the injection of 72 billion naira to be managed by the TCN and enable the discos upgrade their operations to meet the needs of consumers in the country. It remains to be seen, though, whether the latest intervention by the federal government would be enough to change the deplorable narrative in Nigeria's power supply debate.
Let's take a further look at this issue, and I'm now being joined on the News at 10 live all the way from London by an energy investor, Mr. George Etomi. You're welcome to the News at 10.
My pleasure.
Now, how much progress would you say has been made in Nigeria in terms of improvement in electricity supply since the privatization of the power sector in the country?
I would say not as much as the consumer would really have expected. There has actually been some progress. If you look at the numbers, the generating capacity has improved, so has transmission and distribution. But the problem is that the requirements at the point of privatization, that we should move towards an era in which you have the cost of this electricity to reflect its true value is what's causing the problems. Now, between trying to maintain a balance, affordability on the part of the consumers, and allowing the business to run on sound economic principles, we're having disagreements with the government policy on how to ensure that consumers get adequate power. Now, if we don't go to the basic principles, which is that you must allow for cost-reflective tariffs, whatever measures are being undertaken, I hear 72 billion is being set apart, different things are being done. These are mere palliatives. They would deal with issues, but the major problem of the mismatch between the cost of the power and what it is allowed to be sold for, that gap will continue to increase. It is that gap which stands today at 1.3 trillion naira that's causing the distortion in the power system. Because of that, financial institutions will not lend to investors. Fresh money is not coming into the sector because it is as a loss-making venture. And what you need really is for the investment climate to favor in cash coming in, especially funds from abroad. Now, the gripe from the discos and in fact the gencos is that they took a leap of faith when they answered the call for the privatization. But if the government had kept to its own part of the bargain, they would have been able to deliver. The power thing is not going to be solved overnight because it's been with us from independence. But we would have been seeing a steady increase along a planned path. But what we see today are ad hoc measures that would not solve the problem from its roots. So we need to go back to the spirit of the privatization and ensure that the sanctity of all those contracts are maintained, and then you can see that services will be delivered. Having said that, a disco like a co-disco has actually recorded significant improvement in its services, and a lot of our consumers attest to that. The challenges we have is that the appetite for power is a lot stronger than anybody can imagine. So the more you give, the more people want. So at times it is that race to catch up with the demand that's creating the uncertainty.
Now, Mr. Etomi, what can the government do right now to break the jinx in the sector?
What they should do is, first of all, let them respect all the contracts that were signed. Because once you respect those contracts, it is easy for investment to come in. What investors need is a climate that is certain. But if you agree that tariffs should reflect cost, you don't do it for whatever reason, it's a problem. If you are supposed to pay, the government itself, through the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies, It's a big debtor to the system. Let them pay. There was a subsidy element to address the issues of those that would be very vulnerable if we move towards a cost-reflective regime. That has also not been done. The process was well thought out. It's the implementation with which we're having difficulties. If they can go back to that, it's the climate we're looking for. If the climate is there, the investments will come not just in Nigeria, but will come from abroad. The telecom story tells us that if you don't interfere, the investments will come in. And it doesn't really matter whether billions come in or billions go out. It becomes a very robust and energetic market. That's where we want to see electricity move to.
Mr. George Atomi, many thanks for speaking with us on the News at 10.
You're welcome.
When the News at 10 returns, World Bank advocates stronger trade relations amongst African countries to counter effects of U.S. protectionism on the continent. That's on Business News. Join us again.